Thrive Nation, on today's show, we are interviewing Airbnb's CEO. Again, that's Airbnb's Chief Ethics Officer, Rob Chesnut. And he's joined here with Broken Arrow's very own mayor, Craig Thurmond. Again, we have the mayor of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, Craig Thurmond, and we have the CEO of Airbnb on the same show to talk about intentional integrity. The new book written by today's guest, Rob Chesnut, is called Intentional Integrity: How Smart Companies Can Lead in an Ethical Revolution. Easy for me to say. That's how smart companies can lead an ethical revolution. Why leaders have to constantly communicate with their teams, and why it's never ethical for a good leader to go streaky.
We're good streaky! Yeah!
Wow! Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C&Z up on your radio, and now 3, 2, 1, here we go!
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to
Yes, and yes, Thrive Nation, you are in for a very special occasion as we interview the man, the myth, the guru, the Chief Ethics Officer for Airbnb, Rob Chesnut. Welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
Well, I've never gotten an intro before like that. That's
man.
fantastic. I'm doing great.
You know, the thing is, many, many years ago, I built America's largest wedding entertainment DJ company. And essentially, I'm like a guy who wanted to be in the Wu-Tang Clan but couldn't get in. So I'm your hype man on today's show. Just
you could be the hype man. I was just thinking, you could be a hype man.
I'm your hype man. By the way, real quick question here, very important for the listeners out here. What was your favorite old school group? I mean, you go back to like the early 90s, you know, maybe it's 2000s, maybe. Would you have a favorite old school group, like a hip hop group or maybe a rock band or just something where it's kind of old school? Before we get into all this new school stuff, do you have any old school favorite jams or artists?
I actually was a disc jockey in college.
Oh.
I worked my way through college as an FM rock DJ.
Yes.
So we can go back to Traffic.
Oof.
If you want.
Yes.
That's really old school, or early Steely Dan.
Oh.
How about that?
Now let me ask you this. What was your biggest hell gig? The kind of gig where you thought, what choices have I made that have left me at this show? What was your biggest hell gig of all time?
Hell gig was in radio, it was the 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. shift, which is where I started out, which was pretty bad. But I worked one summer at a dairy, taking those half-gallon milk jugs off of the line. It was sort of like Laverne and Shirley for your old school users, where those things are just coming off, and you got to pull them off and put them in crates and stack the crates up high. Oh, that was a hard way to make a little bit of money.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now you are the Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb. Can you explain what a Chief Ethics Officer does?
Yeah. My job is to drive integrity into the culture of the company. In other words, to get employees to be thinking in their day-to-day interactions and in the work that they do, whether what they're doing has integrity, and ensuring that I think we are acting with integrity as a company.
What was your life like growing up as a kid? Did you get in a lot of trouble as a kid? Did you have like a high integrity problem? Tell us about your life growing up as a kid. Were you a super high integrity little kid?
I think I was more an integrity type of kid. I was an only child. You know, Dad was in the Marine Corps.
Oh, wow.
And I did not dare stray out of line. That would not have been a smart thing. So I was definitely a let's follow the rules kind of guy.
Okay, got it.
As I went up, I stayed out of trouble. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. So I think it just sort of naturally followed me through life that I'm into the rules thing.
Now that you've become the Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb, do you drink and smoke heavily now?
Well, I never picked up smoking.
Oh, okay.
but I started drinking in law school.
Okay,
So,
all right. This was curious. I wasn't curious. Wasn't sure if your success followed.
Nothing heavy though. A little red wine at the end of the day to kind of take the edge off.
That's
Probably
fair.
is the most I do.
Now you graduated from 2 schools where they just pass out degrees to anybody. So I'm not impressed. But you graduated from Harvard and the University of Virginia. How did you trick your way in there? Did you have good grades, or just sort of what was your move?
Well, in the old days, it was easier to get into these schools. I could not get into these schools today. I've gone through this process with my kids. I grew up in Virginia, so going into the University of Virginia as an in-state student, it was a little bit easier back then. The competition today is brutal, and I feel for younger people that are going through that application process today.
For the listeners out there that haven't Googled the name Rob Chesnut yet, he used his beauty to get into college, folks. I mean, it's like he won like the homecoming king is what it was.
I knew it was something.
Beautiful man.
It was a radio. I have a face for radio. I'm glad we're doing this as an audio podcast.
He's a liar, and he's a chief ethics officer. He's a beautiful man. Okay, so you worked for 14 years for the U.S. Justice Department, where you prosecuted bank robberies, kidnappings, murder, espionage, and the prosecution of very bad people. What did you learn during your time working for the U.S. Justice Department?
That it's a tough job. I think it's probably the best way to say it, and that it's a very negative job. Day after day, you are working with people who make bad life choices, and many of them started off under tough circumstances. They make bad choices. Let's take bank robbers. That's got to be the worst crime. If you're thinking about committing a crime, that's probably about as bad as it gets. You've got nobody ever gets away with much money. There's usually an exploding die pack with stuff going all over you. You're on video over and over again. These folks they have such sad lives, often drug-fueled incidents. So I find that I admire people that are involved in law enforcement for a career. I do think it can be a difficult, kind of a down negative experience for a lot of folks. And that's why I got out of it.
So you then went from that career to landing a position at eBay in 1999, leading the legal team for eBay. How did you get that gig?
Well, I was lucky because while I was a prosecutor, I kept getting phone calls from prosecutors all across the country with questions about this one little company in my jurisdiction. And they kept wanting to get records from this company. They wanted to prosecute this company. And I kept wondering, what is this company? I better figure this out. And the name of the company was AOL, America Online.
Yeah.
Now, some of your listeners may not know about America Online, but in the early days of the internet, that was the only way you could connect to the internet.
Oh, yeah.
And so I, in order to figure this thing out, they used to give you these discs, and you'd shove it into your computer. You'd plug your phone line into your computer, and that was how you got to the internet. Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was a sweet sound, baby. It was sweet. And Steve Case. Steve Case mailed a CD to every single person, and if you went to Blockbuster Video, back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth, you go to Blockbuster Video, and you'd give us those discs there. That was a sweet time in America. You're getting me all
You've read about this. Man, you're not old enough to know about this stuff.
I know about this. Beautiful.
That's the way it was in the old days. So I was an early internet adopter just because I had to learn about America Online. And one of the companies that I started using was this little company called eBay because I needed to find photography equipment. I was into photography. So I go onto eBay and I find they've got all this camera equipment that I could never find in Virginia. And I remember back then when you bought something online, you couldn't pay with a credit card. You had to send like a cashier's check or a money order. And I remember sending $40 to some total stranger thinking I'm never going to see this money again. And the camera arrived, perfect condition, and I was hooked. And I'm thinking, wow, this eBay thing, this internet thing, this may actually work.
Yeah.
So I wrote an email to eBay. I sent it to jobs@ebay.com. They didn't have any postings, but I didn't even know where San Jose, California was, but I knew California was probably a pretty good place. So I sent them an email and said that they would need somebody like me, that they'd have fraud and illegal items and all kinds of problems. Thought I'd never hear from them again. But next day, there was a message on my voicemail. A week later, I'm interviewing, and a month later, I'm moving to California.
So now let's fast forward, because you went from this job, and then you landed a job working at Chegg, I believe. What did you do at Chegg?
Well, I was their first lawyer. And I basically set up their legal department and helped them transition. Back in the early days of Chegg, they were the first company that came up with the idea of renting a textbook and saving college students money, so that instead of having to buy these incredibly expensive books that you were never able to get really any good money for when you went back to the bookstore to resell them, they helped you save money by renting the physical books. So I helped the company transition to a digital company, a digital learning company, and helped take them public. So today I think they're like a $4 or $5 billion public company, doing quite well. And it was something I really believed in, because I think the cost of a college education is too high, and we need to do something about it.
So how did you go from there to becoming the chief ethics officer at Airbnb? What was your next move?
Well, Airbnb needed a general counsel, and I got a phone call one day. They believed that a lot of the issues they were facing were very similar to the issues that eBay faced in their early days. And look, I was eBay's third lawyer. eBay only had 170 employees when I started, and it was 15,000 when I left.
Yeah.
And Airbnb was going through a similar trajectory, and they wanted somebody that had done it before. And so they wanted me to be their general counsel. So I said, sure. So I went to Airbnb and helped grow their legal department from, about 30 people to over 150.
Wow.
We had lawyers in 21 countries.
Oh.
And while doing it, I got really interested in ethics and leadership. And because I started seeing all these companies getting themselves in trouble, like WeWork and Uber and Facebook and Google. And I thought, something, this is avoidable. There are things that we should be able to do to prevent these sorts of problems. And I started working on it while I was general counsel. And I had so much fun doing it, and I decided to do it full time and write a book about it.
I tried to do some research into you, obviously, before interviewing you. And one of the things I found is you're a likable guy. But yet a lot of people think attorneys are not nice guys. Have you ever grown the legal team so much that you now hate yourselves?
You know what? I try to find lawyers that are fun to be around.
Okay.
And you believe it or not, they're out there.
I know.
I don't think being a lawyer does not have to be a downer.
Okay.
Although I think some lawyers have certainly contributed to the reputation of the profession in that way. But I like enjoying every day. I like having a little bit of fun, and I like the idea that lawyers can actually help do positive things in the world.
Do you spend time with the founders of Airbnb? Because their story is legendary. I mean, they ran out
Great
of money,
story.
so they're like selling. They bought cereal and repackaged it and sold Obama O's and the Captain McCain's that didn't sell very well. I mean, the way
Great story.
Talk to me.
Great story.
Do you spend time with these guys?
Oh, absolutely. Brian, Joe, and Nate are at the company. They work full time and more than full time, by the way. They are extremely dedicated to the company. And I love working with them. They are they're smart. They started the company. They started it because they were living in San Francisco, didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And were trying to figure out a way to make money. And they were design students. They weren't even business school students. They'd gone to design school.
Love it.
And there was a big design conference coming to San Francisco. And San Francisco is notorious for having a shortage of hotel rooms. And so when there's a conference, the price of hotel rooms goes through the roof. The entire city gets booked out. So these guys were thinking, you know what? We know design people that would love just to have any place to lay their head. And we've got 3 air mattresses. So they blew up 3 air mattresses, rented out the air mattresses on the floor of their apartment to design students.
Yes.
And that's where the name Airbnb comes from. Airbnb actually started really as basically an air mattress company. And they've done a phenomenal job growing the company. I really admire those guys.
Do you have nicknames like do you call Nathan Nate Dogg, or does Joe have like a nickname, or does Brian? Do you guys have nicknames for the dudes?
That's a great question, but no.
Really?
It's Brian, Nate. It's Brian, Nate, and Joe. I know it's
not ethical.
It's more, some of the executive. There's a member of the executive team that's big on nicknames. His name's Chris Lahane, and he was President Clinton's chief of staff. And he loves nicknames. My nickname's the Nutcracker, just because I was a lawyer and my last name's Chesnut. And he looks a little like an eagle, so that people call him the Eagle. So there's some nicknames floating around the company, but none for the founders.
So you're the Nutcracker.
Right.
Can I, if you could just maybe take some notes to share with the guys, because I know right now with this whole Corona thing, the one thing they're thinking about is what could our good rap name be? So Brian, you can call him B Money. Nate Dogg, it's obvious. And then Joe, I'm not sure because there's a kind of a sophomore in me that wants to say Joe Mama, but I can't do that. So you'll have to come up with a good one for him. You can't do that.
I'll work on it.
Okay, okay. Now
that could be a career ender if you get that one wrong.
That's right. Now this is the thing we have on the show today, kind of a fun deal. We have the mayor of the community that I broadcast from there, Mayor Craig Thurmond. Mayor Craig Thurmond, meet the CEO, the Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb. Mayor, meet Rob.
Hello, Rob.
Mayor, pleasure, Mayor.
Pleasure to meet you.
Your Honor. Is it Your Honor?
I guess you could call me that, but I usually just go by Craig.
So you guys are. This is just a fun unicorn moment. You're navigating such unparalleled times. In San Francisco, the place is shut down. Mayor Craig in Broken Arrow in Oklahoma, you guys have your own response you're doing there. I'm going to start with you here, Rob, as the Chief Ethics Officer. For people out there who are navigating this challenging time, if they were to pick up your new book, Intentional Integrity. How smart companies can lead an ethical revolution. What kind of things could they learn from your book that they could apply in this challenging economy we now have?
The book won't give you integrity, so it's not a cheap way to. I know, but in the interest of full disclosure, I want to let everybody know that the book doesn't have answers to all of your ethical questions. What the book does is the book provides a framework for helping a company think through the ethical challenges that they've got. And it makes a case, I think a very powerful case, that it's an important journey for you to go on. So many companies, I think, are focused solely on one stakeholder, and that is their shareholders. All they're worried about is what's the share price this quarter, or what's our revenue target. And the book talks about the importance of making integrity an integral part of the way that you think about problems and being long-term in your thinking. And that's the way to build great companies.
Now, somebody out there is saying, I'm a little bit disappointed the book's not going to give me integrity.
No.
Somebody thought, a lot of bad people listening to this show, evil people thought, I'll buy this book and I'll take over the world ethically. But, we got that now. Now, in your book, you teach people 6 C's to foster and manage a culture of integrity. I want to get your take on this, the 6 C's. You don't have to get into all the C's.
You're going to make me give away?
No.
Am I going to give away? I can't give away all of them.
No. You don't have to give it away. Give it away now. You don't have to do that. Just a little teaser. It's like a sample size, like a snack
I'll give
pack.
a teaser.
A little snack pack.
We'll do a little sample of it. Okay. Well, the first C is CEO, because if a CEO of a company is not bought in to making integrity a part of the culture, then you're wasting your time. Because trying to create a culture of integrity while the CEO is willing to cut corners, do unethical things, perhaps engage in inappropriate romantic relationships, all you're going to do is you're going to look like a hypocrite, trying to talk about integrity while your leader's going off and doing something else. So the first C is you got to get alignment from the leader at the top of the company that this is important. And in fact, not only is it's not going to slow your business up, it's actually going to help turbocharge it if you intentionally make integrity a part of what you're doing at the office.
Can we maybe, because you have 6 C's, and I feel like if you give me 2 C's, I feel like people are going to want to buy the rest of the book. That's the folks out there. If you're listening right now, here's the verbal pact we're going to make right now. This is the inferred passive aggressive approach I'm taking here. Some would say if you have the CEO, the Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb, taking time out of his busy schedule during the time of the coronavirus to come on and share with you 2 of his 6 C's from his new book, Intentional Integrity. Some would say, Paul, you might not say, but I would say, some would say you almost have an ethical duty to your family and your country to pick up a copy of the book.
Buy the book.
That's what we think. Okay, so it will give us maybe one more C.
One more, I usually wouldn't do it, but because you put me on the spot, I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you one more.
One more C. I won't ask one more, I promise.
And that is constant communication, and that's the last C. So I'll let people we'll leave the meat of the sandwich for the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
But constant communication. One of the people I talked to for the book is Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, who I've got a lot of respect for as a leader. And he and I talked about integrity is not something that you just make one speech about or send one email about, and then say, well, thank goodness that's done.
Yeah.
You need to create a constant stream of communication, almost like television advertising. You don't run one TV ad and then assume that everybody's got your message. You need to repeat yourself. Often you got to repeat yourself often so that it really drills into people. But having a culture of integrity means constantly communicating with your team in different ways. Maybe using email, maybe using video, maybe using 5 minutes at a company meeting, but making it a consistent part of your communication technique so that it's something that gets driven into the culture of the company and people know that you're serious about it. It's not one email you're sending out and thinking, thank goodness I finally handled that problem and I can move on to something else.
Paul, Rob has fallen into my trap. I had a trap. He fell into my trap, and I win a mega point.
You got it.
He teased up where I wanted to go. Yes, you did it, Rob. So here we go. The constant communication. You are the chief ethics officer of Airbnb, and we know with the coronavirus, people are canceling. And Mayor Craig, I'm sure you get a call every 2 minutes from somebody asking when Broken Arrow is going to open up for business again or when it's not going to. I'm sure you're taking heat. Rob, people are probably coming after you saying, hey, you guys, you're canceling and I needed that money. Mayor Craig, people are probably saying to you, hey, I need my restaurant to be open right now. There's probably a lot of that. So I want to go around the horn here. And I want to ask you, Rob, constant communication. What's Airbnb doing right now? Or what's the approach you're taking? Because really, I mean, if you're not allowed to be in business, you can't be in business. What kind of, how are you constantly communicating? What's happening? What's going on the ground right now?
Well, I'll give you an example. Our offices are closed. So our entire workforce is now remote. But every day there is an email from a different leader inside of Airbnb out to the entire employee base, talking about what's going on inside the company, what the point of emphasis is in that person's area. And every week, our CEO does a live CEO Q&A for the entire company to ask any questions they want. This is something we did when the offices were open, but the fact that the offices are closed doesn't stop it. So now our CEO does a virtual remote town hall. And that way we all stay on the same page, all 6,000 of us all around the world, around what's going on and what's expected of us. At the same time, we're also communicating with our customers and we're listening to our customers. Look, there are no easy ethical answers when it comes to things like, well, how do you deal with cancellation of an existing reservation? Does the host end up losing out on the reservation, or does the guest get stuck with a reservation in another part of the world that they can't even go to? But I think a lot of it is listening to your customers and doing your best to navigate through and understanding that trying to do the right thing needs to be part of the equation. It can't always be about let's just see how much money we can make.
Now, Mayor Craig, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Again, in our city where I live, the city's shut down, and I understand that you are the man who can decide these kinds of things, or your team, or right. Talk to me about how you constantly communicate with people as you find out new information. You're learning. I mean, it's every day new stuff's coming in. The study that just came in from the CDC from Italy this was reported on Bloomberg. It reported 99.2% of all the deaths were from people that had an already compromised immune system or were elderly. Then CNN comes out with their new data. Then China's got their new data. Elon Musk has got his new take on the new data. President Trump has his. How do you constantly communicate with the citizens of Broken Arrow? How do you do that?
Well, I think we put stuff on our website. We do the social media. Our office is still open, so we have a social media specialist, and that's what he does. He constantly puts stuff out, whatever he can get. We're getting information from the White House and from the governor and from other people and the Tulsa County Health Department. And we just put all that out. Whatever we can come up with, we put out. We published today about the difference in the new cases that we've had Oklahoma doesn't have it really bad when you think 81 cases with 4 million people. But there is a little pin-up demand there with testing. But as those tests start happening and we start seeing more tests come out, we'll see a spike, and then we'll get back to where our real numbers are. But that information is put out constantly through our social media and through internet.
Rob, where's your headquarters for Airbnb located?
San Francisco, California.
Talk to me about what it feels like on the ground there right now today.
It is eerily quiet. Now, I haven't gone out much because all of us are under orders by county and by city to stay in place and stay at home. And the only reason you can go out is to go to a grocery store or to a pharmacy or some other essential service. So I go to a grocery store, I go to a pharmacy. I try to do it toward the end of the day when the stores are mostly empty out of safety. It is certainly lacking. The whole entire area that I've seen is missing the buzz, the sort of the hum of activity and crowds that you would ordinarily see. It's a new world.
Do you have a family that you live with there in San Francisco, or are you a single guy?
Yeah, no, I've got a 13-year-old son, and my daughter is in college, but college is now closed up. She's moved back here home, and so we've got remote education going on in the house as well as remote work. Everybody's doing the best they can.
Do you guys have fun as a family by making your kids read the new hit book, Intentional Integrity: How Smart Companies Can Lead an Ethical Revolution? Is that what you guys do for fun, or what are you watching Netflix, or are you booking AirBnB's, or what are you doing?
You know what? My kids, I admit, have not read the book, although I do give them credit for a couple of the ideas in the book.
They're great kids. They should read their book.
They're great kids, but they are busy with their schoolwork. And when they are not doing their schoolwork, we're trying to have a little fun. We can go outside and shoot baskets, at least, as long as it's just us. I'm not going to do it in a crowd. And we eat meals together and try to spend some time together as a family. When your kids start going away to college, you actually look at this as an opportunity to reconnect.
Paul Hood, you are a CPA with thousands of clients all over the country.
Right.
All of are affected differently.
Sure.
We have a unique opportunity here to have the Chief Ethics Officer for Airbnb on today's show, and we have the mayor of the great city of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So I thought you could ask both these guys some questions because, again, it's kind of a unicorn event here where you have two people with such leadership responsibilities at this weird time in American history. Let's start with a question for Rob. What question would you have for Rob?
Well, the question I have, Rob, and as a CPA, there's an actual incomplete part of the exam that I take to become a CPA that's on ethics. And the thing that kind of is almost comical to me is even when I'm studying for that or I take that in college and I take the test, ethics is so dependent upon the individual and how they perceive. And when we have continuing education every year, I have to have about 100 hours of continuing education every year for all the things that I'm involved with. And we have ethics parts, and it's always a discussion. So my question really for both of you is, are there ethical issues in a country built on freedom and freedom of choice to force businesses to close or to force people to stay in their homes for a communicable disease that with all the facts that you look at, there is a very select group of the public that is massively at risk.
You're opening the can of worms.
I am. I just want to know ethically.
You're asking the questions that the listeners are probably wanting to ask right now.
Yeah. I don't know if I can come hard at these two guys. Ethically, what do you think?
Okay, Rob, I guess you're first.
There are no definitive answers. I don't come down from the mountain with stone tablets and all the answers to tough ethical questions. I think the question that you raise really depends on what you believe the role of government ought to be. In a situation like this, I do believe that we need coordinated action. We need leadership from government, and we need individuals to sacrifice, if necessary, for the common good. So I think my personal take on it ethically would be, yeah, there's an important role for government to play here and an important role for us as individuals to play.
Okay.
But that's the fun thing about ethics. You can have a good disagreement about it.
Right. Mayor?
Mayor.
I think if everybody acted responsibly and if people acted ethically, we probably wouldn't need. Well, every ordinance and every government rule that we have is because of some bad
Mayor
actor.
Craig, I have a jackass story for you that maybe you, Rob, would like to chime in on too. This is real stuff. Okay. Spoke to a listener today who told me that they are so glad that this only is impacting elderly people. And now that they know that, they got the data that's come in from, or people with compromised immune systems. They got the data. They said, I'm so glad. So, this is a true story. I'm not making this up. They said they went then to the nursing home to visit their grandparents to let them know that they're not, because the grandparents were worried that the kids were at risk, the young kids, who are kind of the younger 20s. And I'm thinking, that's exactly what you don't want to do. I'm not sure. But then they said they're getting their information from Snapchat news. I guess Snapchat has news. I'm not really sure what that means. But true story. So was that the kind of behavior you're talking about where like a young whippersnapper thinks that they're healthy so they go to the nursing home to visit people? Is that what you're referring to?
The problem with this is that you can be asymptomatic, not have any symptoms, and you can go and you can infect someone. You can have it and not even know that you don't have any symptoms, so you don't know. 40% of the people around the country that are hospitalized or sick enough to be hospitalized are between the ages of 20 and 54. So those people probably are going to survive, but the concept is that you can have those symptoms and not even know about it. We have 2 cases in Oklahoma that are 4-year-olds that have symptoms. They're going to survive, but they have the symptoms and they can pass that on to someone else. And so that's one thing we have to be very careful about is passing this on to other people and not even knowing that we're sick.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm struck by the divide we have in the country in so many ways, but there's a divide between the older generation and the younger generation. There's the phrase "okay, boomer," that has cropped up as being popular with young people who look at the older generation and they're angry because of the way the older generation has treated the environment and puts their generation at risk due to climate change. By the same token, we have the virus where we have a number of people in the younger generation who may be acting in a manner that is reckless to the health of the older generation. So the ethical issues of how respectful we need to be of each other and how we need to be, we cannot act blindly only in our own interest, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that our actions can have a big impact on others and other generations. I think that's a big part of thinking ethically.
Rob, I've got 2 final questions for you. And then, Mayor, if you have a question for the CEO, the Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb, please feel free to fire away. Paul Hood as well. I've got 2 final questions for you. How do you organize your day on a typical day? I realize we're in the corona world, so it's probably different right now. But what time do you wake up on a typical day? And what do you do during those first 4 hours of every day?
I typically wake up between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm a routine guy. So I have the same breakfast almost every day.
Oh, what do you eat?
I have low-fat yogurt. Low-fat yogurt with a big handful of blueberries and some low-fat granola. I'll end up with a cup of coffee a little later on in the morning after that. And then I walk to work. And then, once I'm at the office, my day, I don't have control where I can define my day every day. There are always issues being thrown at me. So my calendar gets booked up with meetings or different issues that I've got to resolve. And it will typically go on. Really, it goes on all the time because Airbnb is a global company. We've got offices in 25 countries. So if you let it, it simply will take up your life 24/7. And you're working on something until you turn the light off at night. And the first thing you do in the morning is pick up your phone and see what happened, the previous evening in Asia or in Europe.
Devin, I'm not sure. You're a big coffee guy. With Starbucks now being closed here Are you aware of this?
I'm very aware.
Something that
It's not closed.
Something that I would encourage you to test this week. I have 13 cats. If you would try drinking cat urine this week to see if it gives you that same wake up,
I think that's a hard pass.
Oh, I don't understand.
That was not a very ethical thing to ask.
Is that ethical to shut me down, Rob? Is that ethical for someone to shut me down like that?
No, I think if you cross the line, you got to get shut. I think I got to throw a flag on. A yellow flag.
Okay. Rob, I appreciate you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And at some point, you'll just have to know, I have framed images in my office of Nate Dogg and of Joe and of Brian. And at some point, if you can passively aggressively trick them, like you could say, hey, guys, let's do a quick conference call about ethics, right? And then they go, now we're on the Thrive Time show. That would be the unethical move. Or if you could just trick them and say, why don't you just call this number and I interview him? Either way, however you make it happen. That's my wish. That's my hope. And I can also handle some solid rejections. But I appreciate you for joining us and the whole Airbnb team. What you guys do is innovative. It's awesome. It's great. And thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show. It was a lot of fun.
Take care. All right, Thrive Nation, we like to end each and every show with a boom. And so now, without any further ado, say it with me now. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
You're saying it weird.
Saying what weird?
All of it.
What specifically am I saying weird?
All of it.
Where do you get off?
Forget it.
I will not forget it. And so, Thrive Nation, we will now end with a 3, 2, 1, boom, without the distractions from that psychopath. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom. I think I need a quarantini. I mean, I appreciate you mentioning me in each and every show outro. My name is Juan, and I've been quarantined for several weeks now, and I could use a quarantini or 7, which is great because liquor stores are considered to be essential businesses. Other businesses that are actually essential are not essential, but liquor stores are. Oh, yes. Thank you for the shout out. Also, marijuana dispensaries are also considered to be essential during the quarantine. 1980 was the year of my conception. From the dorm room founded DJ Connection. Entrepreneur of the year in 07. On my path to the top, I learned about a lesson. Kicked out of college writing a parody rap. Dissed ORU like a Trump and Rosie recap. I've been known for getting stuff done, not giving a crap. And for jocking up wins while my competition naps. Now it is the Thrive Time show on your radio. Catch the broadcast or the podcast download. If you got a business, we'll help it grow. God's got a plan you just didn't yet know about. Workflows, systems, scripts, and hiring. Motivating yourself when you need inspiring. These faces made for radio and not TV. Talking everything from play to Z. Auto washes, banks, haircuts, and glasses. You want to sell it, we've already sold it to the masses. No classes or prerequisites. Just business school as raw as it gets.
It's a Thrive Time show on the radio. Yes, it is. Oh, yeah. It's all about you. 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 Yeah. So we bring the boom.
Yes, sir. It's Z and Clay, broadcasted from the box in the 918. Business school in the topic today. Check the syllabus, it's getting you paid. I'm making the business boom, it's what we do. You can do it, let us show you. I'm a father of 5 with maniacal focus to teach the proven moves, no hocus pocus. Cause get rich quick is not a move, but the proven system will make your life improve. See, I'm more than just a rhymer, like a horse with blinders. Focused on the Thrive Time show, is where you find us. He be the Z and I be the C. Teaching business skills from Clay to Z. We both grew up poor, but we're poor no more. The goal of this show is to help you score. I couldn't see the light until my son could see, but I learned to rock the mic in the high school scene. A young DJ with a $1 billion dream, numb to the pain that rejection brings. So I, like a sod farmer, sweated for that green. Now I'm on your radio with a thank you and please. Share this podcast with a friend and enemy. Now it's talks of business from Clay to Z.
It's a Thrive Time show on the radio. Yes, it is. Oh, yeah. It's all about you. 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 Yeah. So we bring the boom.